Next on Investigative Report. Main battle tank. Is the U.S. preparing for World War III? Territorial conflicts and aggression on the European continent since as early as August 1914 have always ended with a drum-beating march to the next global war. Recently, there has been a push by the Ukrainian government to add the lethality of the U.S. military's main battle tank and the Army's Bradley fighting vehicle to the arsenal of the Ukrainian military to repel the Russian army. Additionally, Kiev has renewed its request for F-16 fighter jets to defend itself from Russian military and drone attacks, as well as a coming armada of T-92 tanks and Russian armored personnel carriers. But in an ever-broadening conflict, one can only wonder, at what cost are we prepared to return American ground forces to the Third World War on the European continent? And now, main battle tank. Is the U.S. preparing for World War III? Is the United States preparing for World War III? Is the United States citizens prepared to go into a world war? War, in my opinion, is the only practice in which the attacker gives the attackee the chance to give up before the first shot is even fired. But typically, it is not until tens of thousands of soldiers, civilians, and children alike have lost their lives before the attackee willingly signs the same peace agreement they refused to before the first shot was fired. And war always goes this exact same way. Now, I am not advocating for one moment that the Ukrainian government relent 1 inch of territory to the Russian army. I'm merely making a statement of fact before we involve the first tank, the first aircraft, or logistical support that can draw the United States into a broader conflict that will surely end with nuclear weapons. Anybody would be the fool that would think that the Soviet Union would take on the Allied forces with just a ground war. The first time U.S. soldiers were pulled into a European conflict, called World War I, we lost many lives. The United States has sustained more than 320,000 casualties in the First World War, including over 53,000 killed in action and over 63,000 non-combat related deaths, mainly due to the influenza pandemic of 1918. And 204,000 were wounded. So also, as well as being injured, there's always a disease component in war. The second time the U.S. returned to the same continent for World War II, we lost even more lives. The United States had sustained more than 407,316 killed in action, and over 671,278 soldiers wounded. During World War II, morbidity from such diseases as tuberculosis, rheumatic fever, hepatitis, and tropical diseases was high, and the prime reason for residual disability and time lost from duty. As I said before, each war we face death, injury, and disease. Now today, the lethality of weapons will bring us casualties beyond anything we have seen yet. And who can tell what type of diseases soldiers will take in a foreign land amongst previously unknown environments. But it would seem that peace on the European continent is something we will never know in our lifetimes. As I said before, we're right at the door of World War III. Each subsequent conflict on that continent has birthed governmental bodies that promise peace, peace, and peace. Now, after World War I, the League of Nations, which existed from 1920 to 1946, was the first intergovernmental organization established to promote international and cooperation to achieve international peace and security. Great long sentence, but it never happened. That is often referred to as the precursor of the United Nations. Now, nobody believes that the League of Nations was ever good at stopping anything. After World War II, the United Nations officially began on 24 October 1945 when it came into existence, as this charter had been ratified by China, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, the United States, and a majority of other signatories. And this is why it makes no sense that one of its main veto power seats, being the country of Russia, has aggressed against its neighbor as it sits on a board of peace. Just like the League of Nations before it, the United Nations is incapable of stopping any conflict. Now to date, the European continent has hosted both of the infamous world wars, and today we stand on the precipice, as I said before, of returning to the same battlegrounds we conquered and reconquered over 78 years ago. Now we're doing this for a deadly rematch. The only difference this time is that we will be going up against our main ally of World War II, which was the previously named country, the Soviet Union. Yes, amazing. At one time, Russia was our biggest ally during World War II, but watch how the plan changes. You see, in World War II, the three great allied powers, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union, formed a grand alliance that was the key to ultimate victory. But the Grand Alliance partners did not share common political aims on the outcome of the war, nor did they agree on how the war should be fought. Always you have a lot of cooks who want to be in the kitchen. So in fact, after the cessation of combat, Joseph Stalin, the then General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, decided, now watch what happens, he decided he would not want to return any of the land gains seized during the conflict back to their rightful territories, so back to their rightful owners. After massive conflicts, there are land gains, just like they're accusing the Soviet Union today, and they don't want to give this land back. And this decision caused a fracture in the alliance forever, and the foundation of the Berlin Wall to be poured, which divided East and West Germany, and brings us where we are today. Now, in our lifetimes, the wall between East and West Germany has been dropped. But to involve U.S. troops or armament in the rescue of a landmass that will never know peace becomes tiring for all parties involved. In fact, to contain Soviet aggression, the Allies and other nations formed NATO, the foundation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Now, they were officially laid down on 4 April 1949 with the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty, more popularly known as the Washington Treaty.
You're watching MNN, the Men's Channel.
In response to NATO, the Soviets and their allies formed the Warsaw Pact, and formerly known as the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance. The Warsaw Pact was created on 14 May 1955, immediately after the accession of West Germany to the alliance. So the Soviets didn't like that. Now, the Soviet Union formed this alliance as a counterbalance to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, as I said before, what we refer to as NATO for short. But I'm sure some of you may be asking at home right now, what does defending a small country have to do with bringing a world war? Plenty. I would have to say plenty. Now, similarly, Ukraine has had its part in both world wars and is about to have the biggest part in World War III with the request of Abrams tanks and the Bradley fighting vehicle. Now, in all wars, countries request tanks, aircraft, and personnel. Now, the relatively recent independence of the country of Ukraine has a long aggression history in both world wars. In the First World War, Ukrainians were split into two separate and opposing armies, with 3.5 million would fight on the side with the Imperial Russian Army, while 250,000 fought for the Austro-Hungarian Army. Remember this, I'll say it again. Now, many Ukrainians thus ended up fighting one another, sort of like a civil war. During that time period, the majority of the territory that makes up modern-day Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire, with the notable far western region administered by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now, on the border between them dates back to the Congress of Vienna in 1815. So when the Soviet Union currently says that they owned Ukraine, they were right. Now, the Congress of Vienna and subsequent Congress constituted a majority turning point. The first genuine attempt to forge an international order to bring long-term peace to a troubled Europe. They constantly keep doing this. And to control the pace of political change through international supervision and intervention. So we can actually do this till God comes back. But they will still have wars on the European continent more than any other place. Massive wars there is. And indeed, it would seem that in every global conflict, Ukraine would play a key role. Now fast forward to a mere 21 years after the last shot was fired in World War I, and the Second World War would begin on the same continent with Ukraine taking front and center. So there's a famous saying, those who don't remember the past are bound to repeat it in the future. Now by then, the control of the Soviet territory had shifted to their occupying enemy, or Nazi Germany. At that time, Ukrainian collaboration with Nazi Germany took place during the occupation of Poland and the Ukrainian SSR by Nazi Germany in World War II. So they had succeeded to the Nazis. Now during World War II, Ukrainian nationalists saw the Nazis as liberators from Soviet oppression, or to exchange one master for another. Ukrainians who collaborated with Nazi Germany did so in various ways, including participation in local administration, in German supervised auxiliary police, and in the German military, as well as serving as concentration camp guards. Hard to imagine. The United States and other nations constantly badmouth what the Nazis did, and today we are giving support to what they did. Now, upon the disillusionment of the Soviet Union in 1991, the Ukrainian SSR emerged as the present-day independent state of Ukraine. Now, although the Soviet Constitution does not acknowledge this particular fact, but the United States does. The United States recognized Ukraine's independence on December 25, 1991, when President George Bush announced that the decision in an address to the nations regarding the disillusionment of the Soviet Union. Wow. Now, Ukraine previously had been a constituent republic of the USSR, or the former Soviet Union. Now, one complaint of President Putin about entering a war against Ukraine was that there were Nazis within the Ukrainian ranks. Remember, he was saying he was liberating Ukraine because there was Nazis. Now, although this fact was completely exaggerated, Ukraine has a genuine Nazi problem, both past, present, and for always. Pictured here, Ukrainian veterans of the Azov Battalion, formed by a white supremacist and banned from receiving U.S. aid, attended a rally in Kyiv in March of the year 2021, 1 year before they got into war over the same thing. Easily the most likable flashpoint for a return to European continent in 2022 lay along the border between Russia and Ukraine. Between 2021 and 2022, Russia steadily built up forces along the frontier as Kyiv, Moscow, and Washington traded barbs. Before every conflict, there's a lot of dialogue traded, and none of it's good. Now, these barbs were reminiscent of the spark that set off World War I on June 28, 1914, when a young Serbian patriot shot and killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was the heir of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Austria, in the city of Sarajevo. Now, as you remember at the top of the segment, I discussed how Ukraine was part and parcel of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. See, we constantly keep returning to the same battle over the same concerns. Now, confrontation rhetoric between the superpowers, as well as a series of missteps on September 1, 1939, aided in Hitler invading Poland from the west. 2 days later, France and Britain declared war on Germany, beginning the infamous World War II. So, those who don't remember the past are bound to repeat it. On September 17, Soviet troops invaded Poland from the east. Now, within no time at all, the United States helped with material, financial, and military aid to its future allies. Yes, long before factories would turn out tanks for the U.S. military, they were producing them for enemies of the Nazi Germany, which were Ukraine at the time, who had sided militarily with Germany. Altogether, on July 11, 1943, the Ukrainians attacked 167 towns and villages. Within a few days, an unspecified number of Polish villages were completely destroyed and their populations were murdered. So, Both sides in this current conflict have blood on their hands. No one side is best. To survive, Poland and the Soviet Union nominally became allies after the German invasion of the Soviet Union. But when it came to choosing sides in this recent Russian-Ukrainian war, Poland chose Ukraine to assist. Odd. Former allies become now enemies. All in total, during the invasion of Ukrainian-Russian war of 2022, Poland became the second largest weapons supplier to Ukraine, with the weapons total value exceeding $1.6 billion as of the 24th of May, 2022. On January 25th of this year, Ukraine would see further assistance when President Joe Biden announced that the United States will provide Ukraine with 31 M1 Abrams tanks. Now, that number is required number to equip an entire Ukrainian tank battalion, but not enough to win a tank war. Tank wars require several hundreds, thousands of tanks, and resupply after those vehicles are destroyed. Now, why do I say this? Why do I say this, you might ask? Because I have been trained on tanks. When I was in the U.S. military, my basic training took place at Fort Knox, Kentucky, or what is called the United States Army Armor Center. And it was at this base that I would be trained in what is known as one station unit training for 6 months on how a tank battle is fought and won. Now notice I said trained on. The actual experience will come later. Those skills will be heightened and sharpened by my leaders after I was assigned to the 2nd Armored Division at Fort Hood, Texas. Now I must tell you, in all that training and when I was in basic training, I learned that not only does it take a measure of cohesion to win a tank battle, but leaders who have years of training, let alone decades, on how to run, repair, navigate, and shoot that equipment on the move. Tank wars are not what they are on Nintendo. They occur in real time. Now, becoming a tanker or a cavalry scout is not something that you can learn over a weekend or over the few months the U.S. plans to train the Ukrainian soldiers to operate these particular expensive vehicles. Now, the brand itself has over 3 miles of cable to run it. Now, in short, it is missteps like these that ultimately lead to U.S. forces being drawn into to show up the weakness of failing forces that are not part of NATO, leading to a broader conflict. The Abrams tank, as well as a Bradley fighting vehicle, require weekly maintenance as well as civilians who fine-tune the vehicle's onboard computers that power the guidance systems or to keep the Abrams laser rangefinder in tune. Just like any other weapon, they have to be gotten fine-tuned. In short, it would take several forms of support to run and keep current those armored vehicles across a partially frozen tundra of land as much as it will during a spring offensive. It's not going to be easy. It will draw on U.S. forces. One way or another, I do not believe that a country as small as Ukraine can go up against a country as large as Russia that encompasses 12 time zones with 36 tanks without involving U.S. forces and the allied powers of NATO nations. On the other hand, I hope I am completely wrong and that all this stuff will blow over by next spring. For Investigative Report, this is Charles Rivers. Thank you for watching.